Dr. Amanda Parker brushed dust from the crystalline data core, her environmental suit's gloves leaving clear tracks on its ancient surface. This was the 14th dead civilization. She documented this cycle, and each one told the same story. The Nexus swarm had come, and nothing remained but ruins and silence. Status report, Doctor. The synthetic voice of her ship's AI, navigator, echoed through her helmet comm. Another cemetery, she replied, her voice heavy with familiar disappointment. Dating suggests they fell about 80 years ago. They never stood a chance. She lifted the data core, watching as its internal lattices caught the light of her helmet lamp. Same pattern as the others. They developed energy weapons, fought back, and were absorbed into the swarm's collective. Navigator finished. Like the others. Amanda secured the core in her collection case, then froze as Navigator's voice came again, this time with an unfamiliar note of urgency. Doctor, I'm detecting an anomalous signal. Multiple signals, actually. Electromagnetic frequencies consistent with. This can't be right. What is it? She was already moving toward the surface, her boots leaving trails in the dust of the dead world. Audio transmission. Musical composition. The patterns match nothing in my database, but Navigator paused, something it never did. I think you should hear this. A scratchy signal filled Amanda's helmet, and her eyes widened as she heard impossible words through the static. Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. That's impossible, she whispered. 6 hours later, Amanda stood on the bridge of her research vessel, staring at a holographic display that shouldn't exist. The signal origin was coming from a star system that every coalition survey had marked as uninhabited, yet the electromagnetic emissions were unmistakable. Television broadcasts, radio signals, military communications, and endless streaming data. They're not just alive, she murmured, manipulating the display with practiced gestures. They're thriving. Navigator, how did we miss this? Unknown, the AI replied. The system lies within a complex gravitational fold. Previous surveys may have been affected by temporal distortion, but Doctor, they're primitive. Amanda watched as Navigator displayed intercepted video feeds. Combustion vehicles on paved roads, chemical rockets launching satellites, aircraft that still used atmospheric lift. Primitive, but advancing faster than any species we've ever encountered. Look at this historical data. They went from their first powered flight to landing on their moon in less than 70 years. The Coalition Council will never approve contact, Navigator said. They don't meet the technological threshold for. The Council is losing this war, Amanda cut in, her voice sharp. We've lost 6 star systems this quarter alone. And these humans, she expanded an image of a military installation, where sleek jets practiced maneuvers that made Navigator recalculate their trajectory predictions 3 times. They're different. They're still using projectile weapons, but look how they've refined them. Their combat tactics are unlike anything in our database. That's precisely why they're dangerous, Navigator countered. Their development is chaotic, unpredictable. They still wage war against themselves. The Council needs exactly what these humans have, Amanda said, her mind racing ahead. The swarm adapts to everything we throw at it because we're predictable. Our weapons, our tactics, our very thought processes, they're all built on the same fundamental principles. But these humans, she gestured at the display where a sports competition showed humans voluntarily subjecting themselves to physical combat for entertainment. They're anything but predictable. She made her decision. Navigator, begin compiling a first contact proposal. Focus on their military capabilities, their rate of technological advancement, and especially their tactical diversity. The Council can court-martial me if they want, but they need to see this. And if they don't agree. Amanda watched as another rocket lifted off from the blue planet's surface, carrying with it humanity's endless drive to reach the stars. Then we'll have front row seats to watch the last, best hope we never knew we had. The research vessel's engines hummed to life as she plotted a course to Coalition space, carrying with her the evidence of a civilization that might just change everything. If only they had the courage to let it. Colonel James Maverick Mitchell squinted at his tablet, reviewing flight patterns from the morning's F-35 exercises. Something was off about the radar readings. Control, are we picking up some kind of interference in Sector 7? Negative, Colonel. The response crackled through his earpiece. But we're getting similar anomalies across all bands. Could be solar activity. The sky flickered. Mitchell stepped out onto the Peterson Space Force Base runway, shielding his eyes against the Colorado sun. The air rippled like heat waves over hot asphalt, but it was barely 60 degrees. Then the impossible happened. The alien ship appeared as if someone had pulled back an invisible curtain, its silver-blue hull catching the sunlight in ways that hurt his eyes. It was massive, at least the size of an aircraft carrier. And it hung there, breaking every law of physics Mitchell had ever learned. All units, battle stations, he barked into his comm, but kept his voice steady. They'd trained for first contact scenarios, even if no one really believed they'd happen. Get me General Hayes and implement Protocol Echo 7 immediately. Before he could say more, a voice filled the air, not just over comms, but everywhere, as if the atmosphere itself was speaking. Earth military forces, hold your fire. We come under banner of peace and dire necessity. The voice spoke perfect English with an accent Mitchell couldn't place. Spotlights from the base swept upward, illuminating the ship's hull. Through his binoculars, Mitchell could see strange markings that seemed to shift and change as he watched. This is Colonel James Mitchell, United States Space Force. Identify yourself and state your intentions. A beam of light shot down from the ship, and Mitchell's security detail raised their weapons. But instead of a weapons discharge, the light coalesced into a humanoid figure. Female, but clearly not human. Her skin had a faint bluish tinge, and her eyes were too large, too bright. I am Ambassador Zix 427 of the Galactic Coalition, she said, her mouth moving in perfect sync with the words. And we need your help. Mitchell kept his distance, following first contact protocols to the letter. Ma'am, I'm not authorized to. Your world is in danger, she interrupted, producing a small device that projected a holographic star map. The Nexus swarm has already consumed these systems. Red dots appeared, spreading like a virus across the projection. At current rates, they will reach Earth in less than 5 years. Colonel. A junior officer ran up, tablet in hand. NORAD confirms multiple objects decelerating from FTL speeds. At least 20 ships taking up positions in high orbit. The ambassador's expression remained calm. My battle group. For protection. Yours and ours. Colonel, I know this violates your protocols. It violates ours as well. But we've been fighting this war for a century, and we're losing. Mitchell studied her face. Years of command experience telling him she was being truthful, or at least believed she was. Why us? We're not exactly an advanced civilization by your standards. The ambassador's device projected new images, combat footage, coalition ships firing energy weapons at beetle-like vessels that seemed to absorb every shot. Because you're different. Your weapons, your tactics, your entire approach to warfare. It's unlike anything in known space. We've become predictable. The swarm adapts to everything we do, because we all think the same way. But you. She gestured, and the hologram showed Earth military footage, everything from modern special forces operations to historical battles. You're chaotic, unpredictable. You still train for hand-to-hand combat in an age of nuclear weapons. You use strategies from centuries ago alongside cutting-edge technology. The swarm's greatest weakness is that it can't understand anything truly unpredictable, and your species excels at unpredictability. Mitchell watched jet fighters circling the alien ship, their pilots maintaining perfect formation despite what must be overwhelming shock. I'll need to contact my superiors. Of course, the ambassador said. But please hurry. We intercepted this transmission 6 hours ago. The hologram shifted one final time, showing a massive swarm of beetle ships emerging from what looked like a tear in space itself. They found a way to accelerate their expansion. We no longer have years, Colonel Mitchell. We have months. And humanity's chaos may be the only thing that can save us all. Major Kate Wardog Reynolds stood in the dimly lit command center deep within Cheyenne Mountain, surrounded by the elite team she'd assembled. On the main screen, Coalition battle footage played in an endless loop, showing their ships exchanging energy weapon fire with the swarm. Play it again, she ordered, her eyes fixed on the swarm's movement patterns. Master Chief, what do you see? Master Chief Carlos Martinez, a Navy SEAL with 20 years of combat experience, stepped forward. They're not even trying to evade. Look at their formation. It's perfect, mathematically precise. No scatter, no randomization. Because they've never needed to, Lieutenant Sarah Cooper added, her Marine Corps' tactical background evident in her analysis. Their shields can handle any energy weapon the Coalition throws at them. They've forgotten the basics of combat maneuvering. Reynolds nodded, a predatory smile crossing her face. Exactly. They've evolved their tactics around a single type of warfare. Cooper, show them what you found in the historical archives. The screen split, now showing footage of World War II naval battles alongside Coalition space combat. The parallels were striking. The Coalition fights like the British at Jutland, Cooper explained, highlighting ship movements. Rigid battle lines. Predictable patterns. But the swarm's gotten lazy. They've never faced an enemy that fights like we did in the Pacific. Carrier strike groups, wolf pack tactics, hit and run strikes. And that's just the beginning, Reynolds said, pulling up new simulations. Sergeant Jackson, report on the close combat training. Army Ranger Sergeant Mike Jackson stepped into the light. Coalition ground forces are completely dependent on energy weapons and automated targeting systems. When we ran them through basic hand-to-hand scenarios, they were lost. They've forgotten that sometimes you need to look your enemy in the eye and improvise. The room's atmosphere changed as Reynolds keyed in her command codes, bringing up classified footage from that morning's tests. The holographic display showed Coalition Marines attempting to learn Earth combat techniques, their movements stiff and uncertain. They think we're primitive, Reynolds said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. Because we still train with knives, because we practice fighting in atmosphere, because we haven't abandoned physical combat for pure energy weapons. But that's our advantage. She brought up new tactical displays, showing hybrid formations that combined Coalition technology with Earth military doctrine. The swarm expects perfection. They expect their enemy to fight like machines, to follow logical patterns. We're going to teach the Coalition how to be human again. Major, a voice called from the communication station. We're receiving new intel from the Coalition flagship. The swarms adapted to their latest energy weapon configurations. Of course they have, Reynolds smiled. But let's see them adapt to this. Show them the railgun tests. The screen changed to weapons testing footage. A Coalition shield generator hummed to life, its energy field visible as a slight distortion in the air. The railgun fired, its hypersonic projectile, carrying no explosive charge, no energy payload, just mass and velocity. The shield, designed to deflect and absorb energy weapons, might as well have been tissue paper. Their entire defense doctrine is built around energy deflection, Reynolds explained. They've forgotten about simple kinetic impacts. While they were perfecting laser weapons, we were learning to throw rocks really, really well. She faced her team, seeing the same understanding dawn on each face. The Coalition thinks they need our unpredictability. What they really need is our experience fighting dirty. Every failed tactic, every lost battle in human history taught us something. We learned warfare isn't about perfection. It's about adaptation, improvisation, and the willingness to do the unexpected. Project Lightning Strike begins now, she announced. We have 3 weeks to teach the Coalition everything humanity knows about warfare. Not just the tactics, but the mindset. The swarm thinks it's facing another predictable enemy. Instead, they're about to face every military innovation in human history, all at once. She looked at the eager faces around her. Let's show them how primitive humans really fight. Dr. Thomas "Doc" Harrison ignored the Coalition scientists' disapproving murmurs as he sketched on the holographic display. "You're all thinking too complicated," he said, manipulating the 3-dimensional image of a tungsten rod. "Sometimes the simplest solution is just to hit something really hard." The testing chamber at White Sands Missile Range had been retrofitted with Coalition technology, but the principle remained beautifully straightforward. Harrison checked the calculations one more time, then nodded to his team. "Mass Driver Test 37, he announced. "Coalition shield configuration at maximum power." The Coalition's chief scientist, Dr. Van X, stepped forward. "Dr. Harrison, I must protest. Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, absorb radiation, and disperse heat." Harrison finished. "But tell me, Doctor, when was the last time someone just threw a rock at them?" Before Van X could respond, Harrison initiated the countdown. The mass driver hummed to life, electromagnetic coils charging along its length. At its core sat a simple tungsten rod, nothing more than refined metal shaped into a perfect cylinder. Fire. The rod accelerated to a fraction of light speed in microseconds. The Coalition shield flared brilliant blue and shattered. The rod continued through the test chamber wall, leaving a perfect circular hole. "Newton's laws don't care about your energy shields," Harrison said into the stunned silence. "Force equals mass times acceleration. We just made acceleration our friend." Across the base, Lieutenant Emma "Ghost" Sullivan was dealing with her own form of education. 20 Coalition soldiers stood in perfect formation, their movements precise and identical. It made her skin crawl. "First rule," she barked, pacing in front of them. "Stop moving like machines. The swarm expects that. They can calculate perfect responses to perfect movements." She demonstrated a rolled shoulder, an off-balance step, the slight hesitation before striking. Combat isn't perfect. It's messy. It's chaotic. And that's exactly what we need. One of the Coalition soldiers, his name untranslatable in human language, raised his hand. "But our combat algorithms." "Forget your algorithms," Sullivan cut him off. "I'm going to teach you something better. I'm going to teach you to improvise." Back in the weapons lab, Harrison's team was loading test data while Coalition engineers examined the hole in the chamber wall with something approaching religious awe. "The implications," Van X muttered, "are staggering. Our entire defensive doctrine is based on the assumption that advanced weapons means energy weapons," Harrison finished. "But we never stopped developing kinetic weapons. We just made them better." He brought up designs for the next test. "Imagine these mass drivers scaled up, mounted on ships. No energy signature to detect until it's too late. No way to deflect or absorb the impact. And if the swarm adapts?" someone asked. Harrison smiled. "Then we change velocity, change mass, change attack angles. Every time they develop a defense, we modify a simple variable. That's the beauty of physics. There's always another way to make F equals ma work for you." In the training yard, Sullivan had her Coalition troops practicing random movement patterns. "Your instinct is to be efficient," she called out. "Forget that. I want to see hesitation, false starts, human uncertainty. Make every movement a question the enemy has to solve." A Coalition lieutenant stumbled, caught himself in a way no combat instructor would teach. Sullivan grinned. "Perfect. That's exactly what we want. The swarm's combat computers will waste precious microseconds trying to predict your next move, because there is no pattern to predict." As the sun set over White Sands, Harrison and Sullivan met in the command center to review the day's progress. On screens around them, mass driver tests played alongside combat training footage. "We're teaching them to be worse," Sullivan mused. watching coalition troops practicing deliberately imperfect hand-to-hand combat. "We're teaching them to be human," Harrison corrected. "The swarm wants a war of mathematics and energy. We're going to give them chaos and kinetic energy instead. Think it'll work." Harrison watched as another tungsten rod reduced a test shield to scattered particles. The coalition forgot that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. The swarm's about to learn why humans never stopped practicing the basics. In orbit, the first human-modified coalition ships were already being fitted with mass drivers. The Newton Protocol was changing the rules of space warfare, one simple principle at a time. Commander Michael "Iron Mike" Thompson watched the tactical display from the bridge of the coalition flagship Starkiller, now retrofitted with human-designed weapons. The swarm staging area hung in space before them, a massive collection of biomechanical ships clustered around their supply nexus. "Status report," he commanded, his voice steady despite the tension thrumming through the bridge. Mass drivers charged at 80%. Lieutenant Jessica Hayes reported from the weapons station. "All ships report ready for synchronized strike. Coalition energy weapons standing by as backup." Thompson nodded, remembering the endless simulations they'd run. The coalition crew around him still moved with inhuman precision, but now there was something else in their movements. Tiny imperfections, deliberate uncertainties that would confound swarm predictive systems. "Enemy status." "They've detected us," his coalition's second-in-command, Sub-Commander Zex, reported. "Their formation is shifting to standard combat configuration. They expect us to engage with standard energy weapon protocols." Thompson allowed himself a small smile. "Then let's show them something new. All ships, execute battle plan Thermopylae." The human name had confused the coalition tactical officers until Thompson explained its significance, how 300 Spartans had held off a vastly superior force through superior positioning and unexpected tactics. Now their ships moved into a formation that would have made Leonidas proud. "Mass drivers at full charge," Hayes called out. "Ready on your mark." "Remember," Thompson broadcast to the fleet, "no patterns, no predictability. Every shot should look like a mistake until it hits. Execute on my mark in 3, 2, 1. Fire." Hundreds of tungsten rods accelerated to relativistic speeds, their paths seemingly random, almost sloppy by coalition standards. The swarm's shields flared to life, ready to absorb the expected energy attacks. The impacts were devastating. Swarm ships shattered as kinetic energy tore through their supposedly impenetrable defenses. Their formation, perfect for deflecting energy weapons, only served to create a target-rich environment for the mass drivers. "Second salvo, randomize vectors," Thompson ordered. "Coalition beam weapons, target their debris shields. Let's add some chaos to their calculations." The swarm tried to adapt, their ships breaking formation to present smaller targets. But that was exactly what Thompson had been waiting for. "Execute Phase 2, he commanded. "Show them why humans still study submarine warfare." Small squadrons of coalition ships, now piloted by human crews trained in World War II naval tactics, began hunting in packs. They used the debris field for cover, striking from unexpected angles with combinations of kinetic and energy weapons that defied tactical prediction. "Sir," Hayes called out, "we're detecting massive energy spikes from the surviving swarm ships. They're spawning combat drones." "Right on schedule," Thompson grinned. "All ships, execute Operation Flytrap." The coalition crews had balked at this part of the plan during training. It seemed suicidal, deliberately leaving gaps in their formation to draw enemy forces in. But as the swarm drones swarmed toward the apparent weaknesses, Thompson gave his next order. "All ships, close the net." The human coalition fleet's formation contracted suddenly, trapping the drones in overlapping fields of fire. Mass drivers and energy weapons created a kill box that turned the mechanical insects into expanding clouds of debris. "Enemy flagship is attempting to coordinate a counterattack," Zex reported, something like excitement creeping into his usually monotone voice. Their combat algorithms are struggling to establish targeting solutions. Can't predict what doesn't make sense, Thompson said. All ships, switch to Plan Crazy Horse. Let's really give their computers something to think about. The fleet broke into seemingly random groups, each executing different historical battle tactics. Some ships moved like ancient Roman triremes, others like German U-boats, still others like Korean turtle ships. Each group's tactics changed randomly, creating a combat environment that defied mathematical prediction. The swarm staging area, for the first time in recorded history, began to retreat. "Sir," Hayes reported, wonder in her voice, "we're reading multiple swarm ships self-destructing. Their tactical cores are overloading trying to process our movements." Thompson watched as the mighty swarm fleet, terror of the galaxy, fled from what they must have seen as chaos incarnate. "Send word to Earth," he ordered. "The Newton Protocol works, and Operation Thunderbolt is just the beginning." Captain Sarah Phoenix Martins watched the holographic tactical display aboard the U.S. Nimitz Iowa, Earth's first space-capable carrier. The swarm had adapted to their initial mass driver attacks, developing new shield configurations that could, theoretically, deflect kinetic weapons. "They think they've solved the puzzle," she said to her XO, Commander David Chen. "Time to change the game. Execute Battle Plan Desert Storm." The massive carrier's launch bays opened, disgorging squadrons of space fighters. Unlike traditional coalition vessels, these were piloted by humans trained in atmospheric combat maneuvers. They moved like old F-14 Tomcats, pulling impossible turns and spiraling attacks that no eye would ever consider viable. "Swarm vessels adjusting formation," the tactical officer reported. "They're shifting to counter our previous attack patterns." Martinez smiled. "Perfect. All squadrons, switch to Operation Viking. Show them why we studied Norse shield walls." The fighters reformed instantly, creating overlapping fields of fire that would have made ancient Vikings proud. But instead of axes and swords, they wielded a combination of mass drivers and salvaged coalition energy weapons. "Ma'am," Chen called out, "swarm targeting systems are attempting to establish lock. Their predictive algorithms are scanning our historical database." "Let them look," Martins replied. "By the time they figure out one strategy, we'll be using another. All ships, prepare for Operation Mongol Horse Archer." The fleet broke apart, individual squadrons operating independently like Genghis Khan's legendary mounted archers. They struck from multiple vectors, never staying still long enough for the swarm's targeting computers to establish solutions. "Enemy vessels are launching interceptors," Tactical reported. "They've modified their drone behavior patterns." Martinez nodded. "They're learning. Time to go older. Much older. Execute Operation Roman Legion." The scattered squadrons suddenly consolidated into tight formations reminiscent of ancient Roman military units. Fighters formed the equivalent of cohorts in centuries, creating an impenetrable wall of coordinated fire. "Swarm vessels are adjusting," Chen reported. "Their tactical cores are processing the new formation." "Now switch to Operation Pearl Harbor," Martins ordered. "Let's see how they handle carrier warfare in space." The formations dissolved as quickly as they had formed. Fighters peeled off in pairs, executing strike and fade attacks that mimicked World War II carrier operations. The swarm's interceptors, programmed to counter Roman-style formations, found themselves attacking empty space. "Mom," the sensor officer's voice carried an edge of excitement. "We're detecting cascade failures in multiple swarm tactical cores. They're burning out processing power trying to predict our next move." Martinez brought up the tactical display, highlighting the swarm's erratic movements. "They can't adapt because we're not giving them time to analyze. Each time their systems start to recognize a pattern, we switch to something completely different." "Incoming transmission from swarm command vessels," communications reported. They're requesting our terms of surrender." A stunned silence fell over the bridge. The swarm had never surrendered. Not once in recorded history. Their tactical cores must have reached a critical failure point, Chen theorized. They literally cannot compute our battle strategies anymore. Martinez stood, surveying her bridge crew with pride. Send word to Coalition Command. Tell them the art of war works just as well in space as it did on Earth. Sun Tzu would be proud. She turned to the tactical display, watching as swarm vessels powered down their weapons. Humanity spent thousands of years learning to fight in every way imaginable. We never stopped practicing obsolete tactics because we understood something the swarm never could. There is no such thing as a perfect strategy. The perfect strategy is being able to change strategies. What's our next move, Captain? Chen asked. Martinez studied the surrendered swarm ships, already thinking ahead to the next battle. Now we teach the Coalition everything we know about accepting enemy surrenders with dignity. After all, showing mercy to a defeated foe is another human tradition the swarm never understood. She smiled, remembering all the military history lessons that had seemed so pointless in the age of space travel. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, especially when your enemy has forgotten they ever existed. Master Sergeant Jake Cipher Rodriguez stared at the streams of alien code flowing across his screens in the Cyber Warfare Center beneath the Pentagon. Coalition technicians had spent months trying to translate their computing protocols into something Earth systems could understand. Now, watching the swarm's quantum networks pulse with activity, he saw something familiar. They're not so different from us, he muttered, fingers dancing across his haptic interface. Just more rigid, more perfect. And that's their weakness. Sir, Lieutenant Maria Reyes looked up from her own station. We've gained access to their tertiary processing nodes, but their security is adapting faster than we can breach it. Rodriguez smiled. That's because we're thinking like them, trying to break in. Time to think like humans instead. Execute Operation Trojan Horse. Their team had spent weeks developing this approach, something no Coalition cyber warfare specialist had ever considered. Instead of trying to break the swarm's defenses, they were going to make the swarm break itself. Deploying phantom data packets, Rise announced, making them look like targeting solutions for human battle tactics. The swarm's systems, already straining to understand human combat patterns, eagerly absorbed the new data. Their quantum processors dedicated massive resources to analyzing the information, trying to find patterns that didn't exist. Now the fun part, Rodriguez said. Release the Shakespeare variants. His team had encoded thousands of human military strategies, but with subtle errors introduced. The art of war mixed with Hamlet. Napoleonic tactics blended with ancient Greek theater. Battle plans that cited sources that didn't exist, referenced commanders who were never born. Sir, another analyst called out, their primary tactical cores are dedicating additional processing power to analysis. They're trying to find the logic in our data. Of course they are, Rodriguez grinned, because they can't accept that there might not be any logic to find. Initiate Phase 2. The next wave of data included everything from medieval jousting protocols to modern special forces hand signals, all subtly altered to create impossible patterns. The swarm's systems, programmed to find meaning in everything, began burning through processing power trying to decode messages that were intentionally meaningless. Swarm networks showing signs of strain, Rise reported. Their adaptive algorithms are creating feedback loops trying to process our data. Rodriguez watched as the swarm's mighty quantum network began to tie itself in knots. They've spent centuries learning to be perfect. They can't handle deliberate imperfection. Launch the final phase, Operation Wonderland. This was their masterstroke. Tactical data encoded with human poetry, song lyrics, and children's stories. Alice in Wonderland mixed with special forces protocols. Nursery rhymes embedded in fleet movement patterns. Sir, Reyes's voice rose with excitement. Multiple swarm command nodes are experiencing cascading failures. Their systems are crashing trying to find military significance in hey diddle diddle. The massive displays showed swarm ships across multiple sectors beginning to lose coordination. Their perfect formations became erratic as their tactical cores struggled to process the flood of contradictory data. Coalition commanders report the swarm's response times are degrading. Another analyst called out, "Their ships are hesitating, second-guessing their own protocols." Rodriguez stood, watching as the mighty swarm began to fragment. They built their entire civilization on predictability, on finding patterns in everything. We just showed them that sometimes there are no patterns to find. System alerts across their network, Rise reported. Their quantum cores are burning out trying to analyze our data. They can't stop themselves from trying to understand it. That's the beauty of it, Rodriguez said softly. We didn't have to break their security. We just had to show them something they could never understand: human imagination. As alerts continued to flash across the screens, Rodriguez thought about all the coalition experts who had dismissed Earth's primitive cyber warfare capabilities. They had expected brute force attacks, attempts to overpower the swarm's quantum defenses. Instead, humanity had done what it did best: created beautiful chaos that no machine could ever truly comprehend. Admiral Rachel Storm Walker stood on the bridge of the Earth Coalition flagship Humanity's Dawn, watching as the largest combined fleet in galactic history assembled for the final push against the swarm's core systems. The tactical display showed thousands of ships, their formations deliberately imperfect, human chaos written into every movement. All battle groups report ready, Commander Lisa Chen reported. Mass drivers charge, coalition energy weapons synchronized, and cyber warfare teams standing by. Walker nodded, her eyes fixed on the swirling anomaly ahead that marked the entrance to the swarm's home system. Rodriguez, status of Operation Wonderland. Their quantum networks are still struggling with our last data upload. Master Sergeant Rodriguez's voice came through the comm. They're burning through processing power trying to find military applications for nursery rhymes. Primary attack vectors are ready. Captain Martinez, is your carrier group in position? Ready to launch. Admiral, Martinez replied. Our fighters are prepped for everything from Roman legion tactics to Apache warfare patterns. The swarm won't know what hit them. Walker allowed herself a small smile. Commander Thompson, status of the Newton Protocol weapons. Mass drivers primed and loaded, Thompson reported. We've randomized the impact velocities just to give their shields something new to think about. Walker took a deep breath, thinking of all the human history that had led to this moment. Every battle ever fought, every strategy ever conceived, every story ever told. All of it now turned against an enemy that had forgotten the value of imperfection. All ships, commence Operation Endgame, she ordered. Execute battle plan, Chessmaster. The fleet moved forward in waves, each group employing different tactical doctrines from human history. Coalition ships, now crewed by mixed human-alien teams, executed maneuvers that would have made ancient admirals proud. Swarm defenders emerging, Chen reported. Their formation is erratic. Their tactical cores are still compromised from our cyber attacks. Now, Rodriguez, Walker commanded, show them the final move. In the Cyber Warfare Center, Rodriguez's team launched their masterstroke, a cascade of data that mixed chess strategies with military tactics, poetry with battle plans, music with movement orders. The swarm's quantum networks, already strained, began to fracture under the assault of human creativity. Multiple swarm command ships showing critical system failures, Chen called out. Their coordination is breaking down. Walker watched as the mighty swarm fleet, terror of the galaxy, began to move like a puppet with cut strings. All ships, execute at will. Show them everything humanity knows about warfare. The space around the anomaly erupted in chaos. Mass drivers launched projectiles at relativistic speeds, while fighters executed impossible maneuvers. Some ships moved in perfect Roman formations, while others employed hit-and-run tactics from the Pacific theater. Each time the swarm adapted to one strategy, the human coalition forces switched to another. Their main quantum core is approaching total collapse, Rodriguez reported. They can't handle the contradictions we're feeding them. The swarm's entire command structure is unraveling. Walker watched as swarm ships began to drift, their perfect coordination shattered by human unpredictability. "Send the final message," she ordered. "Let's end this." The communication was simple, encoded in every human language ever spoken, mixed with snippets of music, art, and literature. A message no machine could ever truly comprehend. We are humanity. We are chaos. We are imagination. And we are offering you peace. The response came minutes later as swarm ships began powering down their weapons. Their mighty civilization, built on logic and perfection, had finally encountered something they couldn't calculate or predict: the beautiful chaos of human creativity. "Message from Coalition Command," Chen reported, wonder in her voice. "The swarm, they're surrendering. Not just here, everywhere. Their entire network is shutting down." Walker looked at her crew, seeing the same pride reflected on every face, human and alien alike. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them humanity's greatest weakness turned out to be our greatest strength. We didn't beat the swarm with perfect logic or superior technology. We beat them by being beautifully, impossibly human." The stars seemed to shine brighter as the ancient enemy finally learned that some things in the universe could never be predicted, calculated, or controlled. And that was exactly how it should be.